watching Channel 20 TV. Be with Channel 20 and let us make things better together.
Dear audience, we'd like to welcome you to Channel 20's today's show. In our regular series, today we have got a very special guest. He's one of the pioneer economists. He is the Professor Emeritus of Economics at the renowned university, which is Yale University. And today we have got Professor Hamada Koichi. So let's welcome Professor Hamada Koichi, and we'd like to talk to him about regarding world economics. Sir, how are you, sir?
Fine, and thank you for inviting me to this interesting.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we'd like to take some of your opinions regarding pre-COVID, during COVID, and hopefully in future post-COVID period time economical observation. So, what you reckon about the world economy? If you just explain to us that before COVID, in your opinion, how was the global economy? If you can just share a little bit in brief.
I don't know much about the European economy, but in the United States and in Japan, the economy was in quite good situations, and the unfortunate coronavirus gave sudden, I hope, short-term shock to the economy. And right now, unprepared people all over the world are trying to handle or cope with it, but it's still very difficult.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You're right, sir. Sir, you know that still COVID-19 impact, it's going on worldwide, and a lot of countries are struggling. What do you think? I mean, normally we say in the language of our business that everyone should have a contingency plan.
Yeah.
Do you think that we were not really prepared for this type of shock? Or you think that no, we did not have really any contingency plan?
The magnitude seems to be at least with the level of the Lehman crisis, and because it was completely unexpected, I think for most of the people, almost all the people, it is difficult to cope with or interact with. However, the economy of the US or the economy of Japan and probably the world were reasonably working before this virus. So once this virus is contained in short term, it's important in short term, then we don't, as long as the medical or epidemic conditions are improved, the world economy will have enough capacity, ability to recover. But if policy mishandling make these shocks stay longer and longer, then even in the short term recovery risk it will become very hard. For example, supply chain is now cut at some place, but in the short term it will be recovered, restored if the shock is of short or reasonable duration. However, if this epidemic continues to prevail and harm various parts of the world continuously, then it will be sometimes the reversibility of recovery may be.
Sir, as you're using the word continuously, then I would like to connect with one of the Japanese very ideal philosophy, which is Kaizen. Don't you reckon that world could learn so much from that Japanese philosophy that people adopt, that how to improve continuously?
I've never thought about it, but this is interesting cultural as well as organizational and philosophical questions. Probably you are familiar with Oriental incremental or adjusting behavior rather than solving the questions at once with very rational measures. So the employment in the United States was hit hard, and layoffs are normal. So everywhere a large number of unemployed people emerged. So the decision or the conflict between the Democrats and the Republicans, how to give hands to the person who was laid off suddenly, is a real political and serious matter. But in Japan, there is labor insurance system that firms apply, or firms guard itself, and some subsidies come from the government. So the usual time, this kind of softening or smoothing the business cycle shock is can be inefficient sometimes. Idle workers remained in the farm, but in this social dramatic situations, Japanese incremental, it's not Kaizen, but Kaisha, that's the farm-oriented capitalism. And some remained in this form of employment adjustment fund by the government and the firm. So the shock when unemployment seems to be a little smoothed in Japan relative to the United States. Right now I am staying.
Sir, people often say that when there is a crisis, there is always a group of people think how to adapt the crisis with politics. Do you think that sometimes we are overlooking our real crisis because of the political involvement and political influence, or you think it's fine the way it's supposed to go, it's going without any political interference?
I think adaptive or incremental adjustment is one of the characteristics of the Japanese economy. It's very hard, for example, that Japanese people decide not to use the crammed morning train. Have you ever been in Japan?
Yeah, not recent.
All the farms starts at 9, and most of people in Tokyo go through one of the two important train lines or so forth, bus line. So the rush hour is very, very hard. Sometimes you don't have difficulty to move around in the train. So some people try to come early and later, but this situation is very hard to adjust. And also we did our failure experiment in adopting data saving time. I think it is a very useful way of saving energy and time, but still Japan cannot adopt it. And holidays are really, again, crammed with people because everybody wants to go to hot spring or some sightseeing places on holidays. So if my former, now I'm retired, secretary at Yale, or even the business manager at Yale of growth center and so forth, disappear suddenly for 1 or 2 weeks to have summer vacation. So, but they do all the precautions to delegate their tasks to us. Those things are not done. So I think incremental thing is a good sometimes, but for example, this unemployment situation in Japan may be a good example because not only government or private insurance, but firms and government insurance take care of some of the shocks of the business fluctuation.
Sir, sometimes we say that economists are always in the safe side because they're just making the policies and suggesting to the government. But politicians are, in the front liners. So do you think that economists should take the responsibility as well for any sort of policy suggestions?
Yes, I am biased in favor to Mr. Shinzo Abe because he was my boss. I was an advisor until still retired. Yes. But he did by Abenomics, the first thorough economic policy. He did increase employment. Employment at one time more than 4 million in the economy that is about 1/3 of the United States. So the 4 million is 80 Yankees stadium. So it's a very big thing. And people neglected growth, so productivity gain is slow because growth is very sometimes negative. But he realized the increase of employed people about 4 million. Recently, I think 3.5, or because of sudden decline of employment everywhere in Japan as well. And so politicians sometimes have a good policy, and that, as I see in this country, is some politicians act from instinct rather than intelligence. So for that kind of thing could happen in any continent, and there is problems. But I am serving special advisor because some of my advice will be adopted by, and actually it was adopted by Mr. Abe, and depending on your perspective, and it may be good or not, but I think the things are going to the good direction. In the United States, Mr. Trump, I'm afraid, is maximizing his own wealth rather than welfare of the total US people. And in addition, he doesn't know the logical reason, only behave upon the sort of his imagined fact that is not necessarily true. So I think United States, I am sort of Japanese citizen right now, so a little bit observatory, third-party observation that the US has right now a very difficult situation with this political leader and coronavirus and long-term latent but now explicit racial tension.
Sir, being an advisor of Abe Shinzo, would you think that how strongly Japan economy will come back again as a stronger economy of the world after this COVID experience? Do you think Japan can really come back very, very soon with their own, the pride in the economy, or you think it'll take an uncertain period of time?
I think the image of the Japanese economy in 1960s, 70s, or even early 80s was very high population growth and movement of agriculture, people from agriculture at that time, that with less productivity to more productive sector, and limitation of foreign technology. But all are gone. Japanese population growth is negative, and industrial structure became more and more modern, with some inefficiencies being protected. Agriculture industry, but there is no strong gains from sectoral movement of resources. And thirdly, the gap between the world technology and Japan is closed, or in some sectors, Japan is the most efficient, like in automobiles. So the natural rate of growth, the economists would say the long run capacity growth rate came down already. So you hope that Japan will recover to 30 years ago is impossible. But still, Abenomic, Abe, Mr. Abe's economic policy to reduce the unemployment created labor shortage, and firms started in a few years, since a few years ago to invest in rationalization or to make to improve the efficiency in farms operation. So by reducing the unemployment and keeping it too low, Japan is recovering. But what you describe is that we can go back to the 1970s, 80s. That's would be impossible. And slight hope was that labor shortage is creating rationalization as well as investment for modernizing things. But the Japanese society is very incremental, very slowly moving. So, for example, digitalization or computerization of money, for example. Digital money is much more advanced in China. Like Chinese tourists in Japan before the corona case bought most of the things with electronic devices. On the other hand, most of Japanese official records concerning government are with written thing with stamps. I think it will change, but there are weakness in Japanese society of doing digitalization, and innovation is not encouraged in Japanese education. They are taught how to understand or remember and understand the teaching of Confucius or Buddha.
Yes, yeah.
Rather than thinking themselves and problem solving. The United States education strength is not that they teach advanced math or advanced technique. But I think it's from John Dewey's education philosophy that we should teach something that is useful, pragmatism, for the purpose of developing society. And Japan needs that kind of change in education, working long time. Mr. Abe probably worked too long, unfortunately, to hold today's situation.
Sir, I would like to ask you one question, and I hope that we will get your very neutral perspective answer. You know that America is having powerful economy. That's what you know and what we know. Japan is having powerful economy. That's what you know and we know. Now, my question is: these powerful economies, whenever they help to the poor countries or weaker nations,
Yes. Oh,
yeah, do you think that these poor countries are really improving day by day, or they're just having more dependency on these powerful nations?
I to Bangladesh. I was fortunately invited probably 3 times Dhaka to Dhaka when I was 30 years old or 40 years old. And I loved the nature and water and skies of Bangladesh. Even though at that time the economic level was yet to develop. And since after in the past 20 years, I haven't been to developed countries so much. So this question is difficult. But one problem is I am concerned. My major is international finance and so forth, and with developed economies, flexible exchange rate, free exchange rate is a norm, but with various countries, developed countries, developing countries are sometimes connected with fixed exchange rate. Sometimes they change value and so forth. So, and sometimes the economic policy that monetary policy works through kind of devaluation
Mhm.
in flexible rate countries doesn't work in fixed term work. So every economic theory should be examined whether it is good for developing countries or developed countries depending on how exchange rate behave. But I think we are having fairly good exchange, particularly with China and Korea. Good exchanges of sightseers and good exchange of foreign direct investment are positive sides of mutual cooperation. In trade, sometimes you have conflicts, but in foreign investment or direct investment and so forth, US and Japan are expecting, particularly Japanese investment in US, or China invites a large investment from Japan. So growing through.
Mhm.
foreign direct investment is one way. Of course, direct investment means personal interactions between people and conflicts may occur and so forth. But by seeing the prevalence of tourists from Asia and the role of foreign direct investment from Japan to India, Bangladesh, I think, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and so forth. So those are milder way of developing both parts of the world without additional or extensive tensions.
Sir, we're almost in the end of our interview. I'm just having two more questions. Being an expert in this economics field, what do you think the world parental bodies like IMF, WTO, World Bank, how are they playing their own roles, especially during this pandemic? Or if I ask you in another way, do you have any specific suggestions for them so that they can function more actively and support to the world economy much more efficient way, better way, Kaizen way?
Very difficult question for you. Conceive some of the plans. I was introduced to developing world by through World Bank or sometimes academic, but through World Bank, JICA, and IMF, and so forth. So it has had very positive educational as well as education to teach about developing countries. And visiting Africa gives me that the idea that what we are doing in paper about the advanced economies are not the sole picture. And one thing, difficult question is sometimes the institution is multiply. Like I was staying in Brussels one time, but very Brussels are very actively visited by all the high and middle classes of economic bureaucrats. So integration and world institutions are very precious, but at the same time, some kind of bureaucracy formed by the international institution. So that's a very difficult question to answer. For example, do you think how WHO is functioning in this crisis?
True, absolutely right. Sir, how's your experience on today's show? How did you feel to be interviewed, by Channel 20? How's your experience in last half an hour? So how did you feel, sir?
I don't know. This is the first, to be sure, for the channel, for this channel. When I saw your complex questions. I felt that you introduce me. You need many half philosophical questions about the world economy, but it didn't turn that way. All the questions, even though I was not able to answer all of them, but that was very important. And always economics textbooks are written by distilling or generalizing advanced countries' experience. But the world is not going that way. So world for the actual guidance for the developing world, we need practical knowledge combined with the understanding of basic economic principles. So this is good education for me, and it's first time, so I may not be well prepared, but it was a very interesting occasion, and useful occasion, I hope, for viewers.
Yeah, no doubt, certainly, sir. Sir, we are almost going to finish our program. So, do you have anything to say for the youth, for the new generation in English, and also for the Japan people, if you say something in Japanese, so that they can see the hope from you in their future? Because
See,
you're a real person, you know?
for the so one way of reacting to the coronavirus is it's cumbersome, terrible, unwanted external shocks. That is actually true. But at the same time, by doing Zoom conversation, we know so many things can be done in separation as well as in living in the same, staying in the same place. Some of the most difficult innovations, teaching or human understanding probably needs to be somebody within a short distance. However, as I told you about the Japanese Russia, there are many ways that we can improve our working style without additional transportation and so forth. My wife says I'm much more healthier after this quarantine period because I do not waste time in commuting all the time or money, commuting or actually flying to Japan. And that I can walk every day regularly with my quarantine style. Yeah. So I think working style can be more rationally organized. And for the Japanese audience、日本の社会は雇用助成金、employment インシュランスのように、なるべく人に迷惑をかけないで、お互いに穏やかに品格を持って危機に対応するといういい性質を持っているんだろうと思います。けれども、ある時にはやはり
No problem, no problem.
社会を変えていかなきゃ、I'll explain a little in English. 社会を変えていく、あるいは世界に飛び出していく人もいなくちゃいけないと思います。ですから、日本は世界からどう見られてるんじゃなくて、日本は世界に何ができるかというふうに考える人がいてほしい。If I give you, if nobody here understands Japanese society, I told them, has a kind of elegance not to make many things in conflict, but by cooperation, everything is gradually adjusted. And that is very portable society to be. At the same time, we are citizens of the Japanese, citizens of the world community, world economy. So, the Japanese should also be trying to announce messages to abroad, not just absorbing advanced countries' messages. So they need, I told them, to have some courage to be more open to that's my young message to young people.
Thank you very much, sir. And with Professor Hamada Koichi, we'd like to also end up our show here, and we'd like to say, yes, courage is the key, is the capital for our future enhancement. You guys, youth, no matter you are young or old, let us keep the hope and courage. Let us believe in ourselves and let us progress. We're going to see you again next episode with the next guest. Till then, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Rejuvenated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Bye-bye.